were really just shoved into these cars. Some people were able to sit, some people stood. But of course, families wanted to stay together. I wanted to stay near my mother, my sisters. And we traveled. It was hot. There was very little air in these. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There was very little air. And can you hear me better now?
No, it's going to be
okay. All right. There was very little air in these cars, and we traveled, which maybe it was a day, maybe a day and a half, but it felt like an eternity. And we arrived in a place when the doors opened. We were already happy to have a breath of fresh air. And this is the sight, what I saw. There was a big sign that said Auschwitz. And there was also a sign in German, which translates into that labor will yield you freedom. There was an orchestra playing there. There were German soldiers. They were always dressed impeccably. They were holding on to a guard dog and to a whip. And they kept yelling that we should line up, get out of the cars and line up. So my mother was holding my two sisters' hand on each of her arms. And I was tall, much taller than I am now. I was walking next to them. And we watched one of this general, his name was Dr. Mengele. He was a doctor. He did a lot of experimental things with people, inhumane. He was. And with a wand, he motioned people to form two lines. People who looked strong, sent them on one line, and I was taken with those people, and the others who either they were with children or looked over elderly. My mother was not that old. She was only 39 years old. She was very young, healthy looking. She was taken to made another line. The other things when we arrived in Auschwitz, we saw these barbed wires, and there were barracks there. Behind the barbed wires, there were people walking around who really looked like skeletons. They've been in the camps already a number of years. There were huge chimneys. There was flame coming out of the chimneys. There was a horrendous stench. And I asked people, what is that odor? What is that odor? And they said, this is where they're burning your family. I said, oh my gosh, that couldn't be. But unfortunately, it was true. Because my mother, my sisters, and all the people who were not put on the line with me to go to work, they were taken into a gas chamber, and they were burned into a crematorium, and the trains were coming, and this went on 24 hours a day. But at that time, I really wouldn't believe it. So I was sent another line with some of my friends from my hometown who were my age or a year or two older or younger. And I also, some of my friends, a few of the mothers, who were in their 40s, who did not have young children, they were sent with us to a workplace. We were taken into a room. The first thing what they did, I had long hair. I had 2 long braids. They shaved our hair completely with those clippers that they use now. Totally, they didn't just cut it short, but they shaved our hair. I was totally bald. Then we had to get undressed. They put us into a room. The size of the room was maybe like your living room, like 14 by 16. There were spigots on the ceiling. And actually, the glass chambers looked the same. So after a while, We never knew whether gas or water would come out of those spigots. This was water, we were showered, then we were just thrown a garment. It didn't matter whether it fit or it didn't fit. You took whatever they gave you. And we also got a bowl, either a cup or a bowl. If you're lucky, you got a bowl. And that was our only possession. Not a toothbrush, not a towel, not a piece of soap, nothing. We were allowed, there were piles of shoes in the corner. We were allowed to go and pick a pair of shoes that were reasonably comfortable because they needed our work. We had to be marched to work. Then we walked then we had to stand in line, and we were tattooed. I had a number A17291. I no longer have the number on my arm, but you see, I remember that number, and I have a mark on my arm. I will tell you about that later. Now we were taken and we were marched to our barracks. I was in barracks C2 in Birkenau. That was the women's section of the camp. You've seen they had like, the barracks of course were empty. They had these triple-decker bunks. Don't think, we did not have any mattresses or pillows or blankets. Some of it were barren, or some of it had some straw on it, and they covered the straw with some kind of burlap. And there were 3 people on each of these slots. And there were 3 levels and 3 on each spot. I think you must have seen pictures of it. They woke us up very early in the morning. We got some black coffee in the morning, a piece of bread. Then we were wandering around during the day, and people were hungry, and a lot of people got sick. But all the time when I was in a camp, I tried to visualize and would say to myself that someplace my parents and my sisters are living under the same condition, and I must live. I don't want to be the only one who does not survive the war. And we were hoping that the war eventually will come to an end. Auschwitz was really a killing station, what you would call. They killed the people, and then we were sorted to go to work. When you stood on line, if they needed 300 people or 400 or 200, they just counted 200 off. Of course, you always try to stay as close to your friends as possible. And I was chosen to go to work in a camp near Krakow. That's a big city. The name of the camp was Plasov. The camp does not exist anymore, but the sign is still there. And every day they marched us down to the town because there were bombings going on. There were rubbles of destroyed houses, and we had to form a human chain to make the streets passable for passengers and also for automobiles or bicycles. So you can visualize in the summer how that feels. It's very, very hot. We had no head covering at all. We were malnourished. We had very little food. A lot of people did die, even in the camps. Every morning we were counted, and the Germans kept very clear records. If somebody died during the night, they waited till the corpse was taken out. If someone fainted, we tried to drag that person out. We tried to make them stand as much as possible. Now, when I was here in Krakow, I did develop boils on my head and all over my body. They did have infirmaries, but I didn't want to check in. One of the people from my hometown, she was a physician. She worked in the infirmary, and she would tell me don't come into the infirmary, because if the doctor decided, whether you were in the infirmary with a little cold or something serious, if he decided to ship every person from the infirmary straight back to Auschwitz to a gas chamber, and she said, don't come in. And I said, well, I always had faith in God, and I said, if I live, I will live, but I'm not going to put myself in harm's way. And she risked her life. She smuggled out some gauze. If she found a clean leaf, at night she would clean my boils, and I survived. Now, some of the German guards were kind, and to us this was already a sign of kindness. If they let us speak to each other, we would talk to each other. If they would let us sing, we sang. And we never showed them. The only thing at this point that we could fight back was our pride. We never showed them that we were hungry. We never showed them that we would beg for food or we were parched for thirst. Now, there were some soldiers, Germans, who were nice. As I said, they looked the other way and they let us speak to each other. But then there were some who were so cruel. They knew how hungry we were. They would sit, while we were working, they would sit right near us, eating these huge sandwiches. There were times where they would bring barrels of water, line us up. Some of them would let us dip our bowl into this water, take some water. But there were also guards who would dump the water on the ground. They would laugh, they would clap after we were lined up parched from thirst and told us get back to work. Now, I also want you to know, if a German soldier, if he didn't like the way you looked, if they always had a pistol in their boots, if they wanted to shoot you, he could. He did not, he was not held responsible, and he was probably even given an award for killing a Jew.